everyone. Welcome to the energy and awareness management process for selling. And tonight we are featuring our very own Hans for this portion. We often say that he is the mascot of Mind Transformation. He's the guy that's got the most recognizable so-called face in Mind Transformations. So the time is going to be about 30 to 35 minutes, and it's going to be tight and fast as best as we can. So so I wanted to, in somewhat, create somewhat of a generalized frame before we begin. I often say that in any organization, right, once you have determined what is the product or the service that you want to that you're going to provide, right, then the next important process is actually selling. That means you can actually talk about, you know, having production slow down, or you can have what we call customer service still having some issues. We have HR managing a lot of situations and so on and so forth. And that the organization, right, can still be functioning. But once you take out the sales department, the entire organization will cease to exist within a couple of weeks. In fact, within a couple of days. So the sales is actually the lifeblood of the business. And I think that Hans fully understands that, you know, that sales is the lifeblood of the business. And it's not just in training business, in any business. So I think I made no apologies, or I made it very clear that sales is one of the most important functions in the business, and I have a lot of respect. And also me myself, I come from a sales background myself, and I spent many years in it. I would say I'm very good at it. Yeah. And so Hans, so it's your turn right now to speak up. Essentially, Hans, tonight, what are some of the things that you are thinking about for presenting? What are some top ideas, some of the things that you are wanting to focus on for tonight?
Okay. Today I would like to focus on the inner salesmanship aspect of sales approach itself, be it in terms of tapping on the beingness of it, because many times we may be so focused on the sales strategy that is at the external, but we tend to forget that what is determining our sales progress and the sales result. The 80% of it comes from how we perceive the sales approach, how we perceive ourselves, and how we perceive our customer as well.
Yeah.
So in terms of our daily routine too.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I think there's a lot of wisdom in saying that. There's a lot of wisdom in saying that, because the technical side, right? The technical side of things is something that we can learn. I mean, it's only a matter of time that you will learn it. Whether you're talking about insurance, you're talking about any product develop, any kind of product or service, right? The information, right? It's more or less relatively stable, and once you learn it, you will take some time to learn. Once you give some time, it will be there. You'll be able to get it. But the larger part of it is actually what we call the inner game. The inner game that you're talking about. If that's not being handled right, then the biggest thing that holds people back is not just the technical information, but it's actually what we call the human side of things. How do you actually approach your business? So I'm going to move on to the next slide. And give people a little bit of our backgrounds. So how long have you been practicing yoga?
Only 1 year.
1 year, okay.
Yeah.
And I guess it is you kept going at it because it was very helpful for you in terms of even for your sales function.
Yeah, because it helps me in terms of getting myself mentally alert and keeping my energy up, even when I deal with tough customers.
Right. There you go. Yeah. So it's the part of the being.
Yes.
The being and managing the state within, essentially. Okay.
Yes.
All right. So we are gonna talk about tonight. These are the 4 major points that we're going to cover tonight. Sorry. And so this is going to be what we'll be focused on. Actually, there are 5. There might be some areas that we want to keep it thinner and then move on if we run out of time. But these are the 5 areas. Yeah. And the first 2 is the one that we're going to start off with talking about energy. Essentially, it's by talking about energy, right? One is much more on the nutrition side of things. The other one is much more in terms of the emotion side of things, right? And then the third one is talking about what you said just now, that we need to be aware, mindful of our own thought process, our own internal strategy.
Yes.
And then there is, in particular tonight, so there's something that we want to talk about is the before the pandemic and then the after the pandemic, right? Because that was a major impact for us last year. And then we had to scramble around to redesign our strategy and so on and so forth. Right. So
yes.
That's a part on recrafting the value, recrafting the value proposition and so on and so forth. And then something that you have developed over time, the 4 fundamental selling strategy, that I think is transferable to many other sales professionals. Right? So let's get going. We just want to keep the time fast. So the part that we're going to talk a little bit more right now is this notion of the screen's a bit smaller so that I can type. We're talking about, you mentioned that the emotions are everything. So for you, maybe you can tell us a little bit of your background in terms of your prior to your role with Mind Transformation. What was your previous job background?
I was a financial consultant in Prudential. So I've been there for 3 years before I hop on to Mind Transformations in a customer relation role and a cost facilitator. And I'm also engaging in certain sales role as well in Mind Transformations as well. Yeah.
Okay. So for you, when you talk about emotions as the most important thing, right? When you say emotions are everything, right? What is the highlight? What is the most important point that you're trying to make here?
Because we are selling to human beings, and human beings they get excited and enthusiastic in buying something from their emotions as well. Even how motivated they are to buy from someone is also through their emotions, which is stem from the values as well. So that is something that we want to focus on the most, rather than selling on the logical feature manners. And our emotions are also get us the perceived credibility from our customers and prospects as well, because more often they will unconsciously pick up any form of non-verbal cues when they interact with us.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So the way you look at it is that the emotions that you talk about is connected. It influences or is connected to our non-verbals in a sense. And
yes,
our ability to size up or maybe sense a person is also not just in the thinking realm. It's actually in what we call the emotional realm, where we actually calibrate someone during what we call any kind of, not just in sales, but in any kind of interaction, right? And that's got to do with some form of like EQ, the notion about emotional intelligence, right? But when you say that buying it for you, right? When you talk about emotions and everything, are you talking about managing your client's emotion, or you're talking about managing your own emotion, or you're talking about both?
I'm actually talking about both, in the sense that when I manage my own emotions, I'm able to also influence the other person as well. And let's say there is certain form of emotional shift in the prospect that is not productive in terms of the buy-in and in terms of the cooperation itself. That is when I proactively shift my own emotions. That allows me to shift my tonality that influence the other person as well. So these are all at the subconscious level itself.
Yeah.
And on top of that is because many times when people gauge whether the other person is trustworthy based on their energy as well. If they gauge that somebody is off They may not think that, hey, this person is untrustworthy. They will just think that, hey, something is off with that person or something is on, but they couldn't logically pick up what is that. So that's where the emotions come very crucial in that in the sales interaction.
Yeah. I think that's a lot of wisdom in saying. It's really a lot of wisdom inside that, and that this can only come after it only comes after a number of years of experience in the sales function, right? Which is not just only in sales. I often say that if you are able to manage sales, then a lot of time your ability to be able to interact with people, the relationship side of things, in general communication will also be improved. Will also be what you do in sales is also transferable in terms of like interacting with people in general in that sense. So what I was trying to get down to was that what you just said can only come after a certain number of years of experience, whereby it's not just about the product, the percentages, and all the mathematical and all the features and benefits, right? That is something you have to know, obviously. That's called just being professional. You need to know your work, right? But the part that you're talking about is about the part that people actually make a decision or they hold back, right? It's actually about the emotional side of things, right? And then what you're saying right now is that so important, actually in sales, that this notion about managing the client's emotions, right, by orchestrating your own emotion. So it's not about manipulating the client per se, No, it's about how do I change my own state so that I can then be able to convey my message differently in that sense. Yeah. So for you, right, this is obviously everything that you talk about here is a very large topic. We can talk about it for a long time, but part of the challenge that we both have, and especially you, which is how do we talk about something complex, right, in the simplest way possible because of the time. So for you, in terms of this at the strategy level, how do you manage your own emotions? What are tips or techniques or steps that you take to manage your own emotions?
One is to gain awareness of how we hold our physiology, be it the way we hold our spine, be it the way our breathing pattern is, be it the way we hold our every part of our body, the way we sit, the way we walk as well. Because many times when people are too focused on their sales strategy, they get caught up in their own head, but they are not aware of how their body is functioning inside of them. But this is where it affects the energy level of themselves, and in turn affects the other person. So that is number one, under the physiological aspect. The other part is when they are aware of their own physiology, you have a higher chance of gaining awareness of the limiting assumptions on the spot. Yes, meaning that you are being aware of your thought patterns. Yeah. This is especially important when we are handling concerns from our prospects and customers.
So what you're saying is that if I got you correctly, it means, in other words, that when you are aware of your own feelings that comes up, be it especially when you're, especially when you're experiencing some negative, some less productive emotion, right? But you feel it, then you are able to say you can start to question what are your own thoughts and beliefs behind that emotion, and then use that as a way to be able to kind of like adjust your own physiology, have your own inner conversation, I guess, to be able to then project or retarget what you're going to say differently in a sense, in a sales environment. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So essentially, what you're saying is emotion is not just like a bunch of drama per se, but the emotion also is connected to your thoughts, to our thoughts. Yeah. And then, yeah. So once we are clear about that, right, then we can actually use that as a way to say, maybe I'm picking up something from the client. I can use the emotion I pick up from the client to be able to use that they have got some fear, concern.
Mm-hmm.
If I pick that up, then I know, okay, I need to be able to speak in a way that helps them to calm down, or maybe give them the things that they need to get a sense of assurance, and so on and so forth. Yeah, okay. Or their whatever emotion, whatever emotion, maybe they got other things that they are concerned about, you are able to pick it up. But what you're saying is really important. It's not just about the clients, it's also about yourself. Whatever is going on inside of you, you are able to tap into your own thoughts and then begin to be able to reframe or restructure them so that you are able to then handle the situation better.
Yes, and I'd just like to add that this is a lot more effective than micromanaging facial expression, you see. Because I've been taught in the past, whenever I meet a prospect, I need to maintain my smile, but the more I do that, I realized in the past, the more stressful I get, the more I get caught up in my own head, you see, about, what would they think of me? But when I start to adjust my breathing, I adjust my physiology, I'm more aware of my limiting assumptions and to be able to change my thought patterns as well.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point, because what you do in terms of your smile is actually more external. It's the more external part of it. But if your inner landscape, your inner climate is not being managed, right, then that's why I think people say that that the person is not congruent, or the person is not natural, or they look fake. They look fake because fundamentally, when someone has a fake expression, that means their inner state and what their facial expression, right, does not match, essentially. Yeah, exactly. That's a very elegant way to say that. When your emotion and your facial expression does not match, right, then you have a sense of being fake in a sense. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
Yeah. So that's a very good point. So I think we need to move on to the next segment right now. Yeah. Oh, my screen is freezing up. Let me see if I can move it. Okay. So now we talk about the notion about diet. Diet right now. So this sales talk is about two items only, which is managing your energy and your awareness. Yeah, awareness. And then so you talk a little bit about your awareness just now, and I guess an awareness is also about your internal strategy, being aware of your own thoughts, being aware of your own internal strategy, how you do things, essentially. So how is diet part of the energy part? How is diet part of the energy equation for you?
Okay. I think we may have learned from science that food has a source of energy itself. So what we put in our body will determine the kind of energy that we absorb from the food itself. And that is also where it affects a salesperson enthusiasm level in presenting the products or services. And maintaining the enthusiasm level is very important because that will determine whether we can influence the prospects' energy level to be enthusiastic as us, or are they feeling as bored as us or as tired as us?
Okay. All right. Yeah. Okay. That will be yeah. So that could be a slap on somebody's face. So I guess what you're saying is that if you eat in whatever you eat, and if you are first of all, I think what you're saying is that first you need to be aware that what you eat has got impact on you. But once you're aware and you're not doing anything about it, right, then you're actually in somewhat serving that that low energy to yourself, because every time when you eat that kind of food in a certain time of the day, then a certain state will come after that, right? And then, but you're not doing anything about it. So what happens is that when you eat that, after your energy goes down or whatever, sometimes it's not just going down, sometimes I can actually go haywire. It means you are not focused. Your mind is running in many directions. You get very distracted, right? And that is not just someone who's got ADD or ADHD per se. It could be the fact that the food that you drink or eat, right, is actually creating a lot of what we call uptight or fast energy in your system. And so that affects your performance in a sense.
It affects our biochemistry, and I think you have more research about that more than me itself, with all the bunch of PhD research on how the food affects our energy level.
Yeah. So the food biochemistry is actually being featured in the book Choices of Now that I wrote, and that's something that people can actually write in to find out more about it. But essentially, so that's your insight, right? Food is a source of energy and it affects your state. Do you have some examples, of personally for yourself, of how this has impacted you?
Okay. For me, usually I meet some of my prospects and customers, especially those who just finish a work meeting, or maybe they have encounter conflicts with others, or some of them because they have multiple work demands. So usually some of them, their state may not be as optimum itself. So part of me when I am conversing a sales conversation with them is that I take the ownership and responsibility, that I make sure that my state is optimum and grounded, so that it's as though I'm helping them to ground themselves, so that they can pay attention to me too.
I see. All right. Okay, so it goes back to what you're saying. You're managing yourself to be able to influence the other person. Yeah.
Yes.
I'm just asking, do you have any kind of before and after in the past, the way you eat and the way you're eating now? What are some of the what are some of the differences that you have noticed?
Okay. Before that, I really just eat whatever it has been eaten, whatever my colleagues eat, I eat together with them. And then many times
that explains to almost like 80% of people out there.
Exactly. And then often my colleagues and I, we will have already expected that, hey, we are going to feel sleepy after lunch. And we thought that is the norm, you see.
Yeah, that's a good point. It is accepted as a norm.
Yes.
It's a norm. It's like you breathe or you sneeze or you fart, whatever that is. That is part of human biology, right? That you will feel sleepy after taking lunch. It's a fact, or it's a kind of fact. But and so what you're saying is that your own discovery, that's not true.
No, that is not true. Because when I changed my diet, I took advice as well in terms of the intelligent food combination. When I attended the NLP course as well for the first 4 days, I start to realize that my mental clarity start to increase. That is one. And I can feel my stomach start to be able to digest food easier. So that maintains a lot more energy within me, rather than a lot of the energy being consumed by the digestion. Yeah. And when that happens, I have more mental flexibility and more creative juice to handle all sorts of concerns from my prospects and customers without needing to script anything. So that's my experience.
So would you be able to give some examples? Like, some people who are listening right now, sometimes they may not understand. So let's say in the past, an example of a food that you eat that makes you low energy, and then now the food that you eat right now, can you give some examples?
During lunchtime, me and my team, me and my colleagues, when I was in my financial consultant years, we like to eat the zha cai peng. We call that the zha cai peng, meaning the rice with meat and then with some veg itself. And then many times for whatever reason the hawker will add a lot of rice with a lot of meat and less vegetables itself. So what happens is that after eating that, I'll feel a little bloated in the stomach as well. And then the sleepiness will start coming in. Yeah. So the time taken for me to recover from that is a lot slower when I mix the carbohydrate and the animal protein together. And I realized that when I change my food to more veg, predominantly veg itself, I'm able to digest a lot faster. Yeah. And I would say that I won't be having constipation a lot more often in the past. In the past, I tend to get a lot more constipation, but now I visit the toilet every day. Yeah.
Okay. So that what you're just saying is not just only on an energy level per se, but it's also your overall health has improved in that sense. Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
But what you're saying right now is that when you in the past, when you eat any kind of like this is actually perhaps only understandable in Singapore, economic rice.
Yes, economic rice.
That are economical.
But not really economical in energy, you see.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah. So it's economical when we say economical recipes, they are actually, it will cost a lot more if you were to cook it on your own, but then they cook it in very large portions. So you can have a variety of food and you only pay a small sum for the food, and you got a plethora of food choices. But if you eat it in a way where there's a lot of meat, heavy meat, and then when you mix it with rice, then it has a toll on the digestion. That means
mental clarity.
Yeah. So a lot of the energy after lunch goes into your digestive system, trying to digest the food. And then if you combine the food in the right way, then what you're saying is, so what is the right combination?
I think right combinations there are varieties, but the main thing that I usually follow is to increase the amount of veg and to avoid having carbohydrates and animal protein on the same meal.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So you will have a larger portion of veg.
Yes.
Veggies, nuts, and so on. So veggies and nuts.
Yes.
And fruits, and then you will, and you can. Do you have it with rice? Do you actually have those with rice sometimes?
I minimize the rice. Now I replace that with quinoa.
Okay.
Which is a lot lesser in the mass.
Yeah. Okay. So essentially, you are separating the proteins. You're separating your proteins from your carbohydrates. And the protein here we're talking about, for you, protein is actually plant-based. It's a plant-based protein, which is still plants, right? And you can go with rice. But what you're emphasizing is actually the rice is a smaller portion, or you replace it with quinoa. Quinoa is one of those miraculous kind of food because the minerals and vitamins are actually quite exotic. They're quite exotic. And the carbs are lower than rice. The carbohydrates content is about 32% lesser than rice. So essentially, you get more minerals and protein and so on and so forth, and you get lesser carbs. And then you're combining it with a lot of plants. So what are some of the plants? I mean, you talk about for your breakfast or lunch, right? On your typical day, your breakfast and lunch, what does it look like?
For lunch, I'll take those dark leafy vegetables and mix with a bit of carrots and mushroom. And sometimes I'll take some kale. Sometimes I'll take chickpeas as well.
Okay. It looks like the diagram. It looks like the bowl that's in front of us right now.
Yeah.
Chickpeas, kale, a lot of green and stuff. Do you like, so it can also be avocados as well?
Yeah, avocado for me sometimes if let's say I don't have time to cook on my own, or I don't even have time to go and buy somewhere, then I will mix avocado with a large portion of fruits because I don't need to cook.
Yeah.
Then even fruit diet is for me, I find that fruit diet digests a lot faster than even those veg as well, and it gives me the a very digestible feeling and has more energy as well.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So even this is actually an easy takeaway for salespeople, that people who are in sales, for people who are in sales.
Especially when they are back-to-back appointments, sales appointments.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So that's enough. I think we have essentially what you're talking about right now is that the food that we take is a source of energy for us, and to get what we call good energy is to be able to eat in a smart way. And according to some food experts, food science is that if you are able to maintain what we call separation of meat protein from your carbs, then your system is able to work for you rather than work against you, right? And this is actually part of the course that we teach, right? The course that we teach and our encouragement for our students. Yeah.
Yes.
So okay, so let's move on to the next point. Our time is just passing by so quickly. So briefly, let's talk about we talk about awareness, right? Which is part of it is energy. I think we covered the energy portion. Now we need to talk about the strategy portion of it. So you're talking about awareness of our own strategy, means our own thought patterns and so on. So one of the topics that is actually relevant for our current time right now is this notion about the pandemic, how it actually affects you in terms of your own sales approach and so on and so forth. So could you give us some of your practices or things that you were doing right before the pandemic, and then when it hit us, what was the thing that you do differently?
Before the pandemic, I would prefer a face-to-face contact point with the prospects itself. So usually over the phone call, I will call them, and then after I articulate the unique value propositions of what I'm about to propose, then that's when I will invite them for a face-to-face sales appointment, and what is in it for them when they meet me, and what to expect out of me as well. So usually I will deal with a face-to-face, and I will also need to strategize in terms of managing my energy from traveling from one place to another place as well.
Okay.
Or after the pandemic, I would say that I will need to re-strategize everything as well, because I'm so used to inviting my prospects to face, but this time I one is to figure out what is my virtual video platform, which right now I'm using very often, is Zoom for since last year till now. And in terms of focusing on how I can change my unique value propositions in terms of the sales appointment over Zoom. And one of them is that there's a lot of there's a time saving factor as well from the traveling. Yeah. Okay. So in terms of that, we can the prospect and I, we can have a conversation at the comforts of our own home without needing to travel everywhere.
Okay. So what you're saying is after the pandemic, you spend more time, you have more time to be able to communicate. You are able to spend more time with the client.
Yes.
So in terms of the way you prepare, in terms of the way you talk, the way you I don't have the word, but it's not convince the client. But before the pandemic, right? In terms of what you've just described, they're actually more on the physical side of things, the traveling and the face-to-face appointment. But what was going on? What were some of the things that was going on in terms of your thought, how you present your ideas, how do you actually organize your time? How do you organize your priorities or whatever? What was going on before and after, in that sense?
Okay. Before that, I'll need to organize in terms of how I slot my appointment time itself. That means that includes the traveling time, and with different location, what is the different traveling time that I have, and how am I going to maintain my energy when I go to the sales appointment venue. So that's for me before pandemic.
Okay.
And on top of that, I also need to figure out what kind of physical brochure I need to present to the client as well. After the pandemic, a lot of such physical preparation was not needed, because a lot of them I can just present through the PDF file. Brochures I can put it on the PDF file and just share screen over Zoom itself.
Okay, so that's a part of what we call the being more virtual, being more electronic savvy in a sense. I guess what you're saying is
yes. And I would say that after the pandemic, I'm able to slot more sales appointment because I don't need the traveling time.
Okay, so these are things that in terms of technology, in terms of time and schedule. Would you be able to share your insights on what was there any change in your was there a critical change in your mindset or your beliefs on your beliefs?
Yes. In the past, I tend to think that prospects and customers will only trust me when they meet me face to face. But then right now, I realize that it's more on orchestrating my energy. Sometimes I don't even need to go to an online face-to-face platform, but I can just converse what I need to say over the phone call, and still be able to get them for the next appointment, or I can just get them to enroll on the spot.
Okay.
Yes. So it's as though the government is helping me to shift my limiting beliefs. Yeah.
Okay.
In terms of the way I present, in terms of the inner thought process, or what the sales process, a lot of sales process are very similar. It's still similar.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, so again, this can be a very lengthy topic, but essentially what you're talking about is that you're more focused on your energy, which may not be what you call the visual side of things, but it's actually on the emotional, the energetic side of things. And that can actually happen not only on a Zoom, a visual face-to-face kind of thing. It can also happen on the phone as well, because your energy can carry the phone can carry your energy across to the client. And so that's one of the ways you actually use to be able to communicate with the client in that sense.
Another point that which also surprised me, another point that I realized is that I'm able to show in a meticulous manner in terms of how much I care for the prospects a lot more, in terms of what I need to pre-frame in terms of technology, a lot more than when I'm in a face-to-face with them. So that in terms convey the more care that I have for the prospects to help them to reduce the hassle of the technology.
Okay. 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 So essentially, what you're saying is that you needed to spend time actually getting into knowing the Zoom, getting yourself very familiar or good at the Zoom.
Mhm.
And the other part about it is that because of the cut down in traveling time, you're able to give each client more time to be able to have a more meatier conversation, right? And you you are able to present your information documents and everything in more electronic means, using more electronic means. And I think the punchline here is actually talking about being focused on your energy, which is your emotion and your state, right? That and uh, you kind of almost say that it's almost accidental, that the fact that you're not meeting your client, because in the past you believe that when you meet a client you are in proximity and your visual will make a difference, but right now you realize that your state where you are at any given point in time can actually be conveyed across even on the phone. Not it doesn't have to be a visual front. It can be on the auditory, on the sound, on the conversational side of things. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Good. So again, there's a lot of things that we can talk about, but unfortunately we have to move. So, so this part talking about the recrafting the value proposition. That means essentially, right now, your approach in terms of the way you do your overall way of how you strategize yourself in terms of the VUCA environment. I mean, we are
Yes.
actually in the VUCA. We have been in a VUCA space for a long time. Actually, we can say the VUCA has been here since the 90s, since the 2000 and so on and so forth. But it becomes much more apparent, becomes much more clear with the rise of the pandemic, pandemic. So VUCA for the audience is volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and uncertainty. Let me repeat that: volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. These are the four critical descriptors that is describing our world right now. So can you walk us through in terms of how did you recraft the value proposition?
In terms of recrafting the value proposition, because many times the situation keeps changing together with the government restriction as well. So many times I will need to discuss with my team members in terms of what is the new unspoken prospects needs from the responses that they have, so that all of us as a team, we can then spot what is the patterns of the current needs that they have.
Okay.
And then from there we infer what are the possible prospects priorities as well, and how they have changed.
Okay.
And then from there, we plan in terms of how are we going to craft either the marketing message or the email message that I'm going to send, or the WhatsApp message as well, to invite them either for a phone call, a sales appointment, or to invite them for an enrollment.
Okay.
And of course, because part of our team also involves the marketing team as well. So I'll also update the marketing team as well in terms of suggesting what is the new marketing message that we need to portray as well. And from there, we test the prospect's response. Whether they are more responsive to our response or are they still having a non-response. If there is a non-response or not so favorable response, then we continue to repeat this process in terms of so that we can craft a new message again. Yeah, because many times not many prospects with these current times, many people are so busy over their work demands. I also realize that not many are available. They don't have the mental bandwidth to answer my phone call as well. So learning how to craft a WhatsApp or email messages to catch the attention of the reader, that is of utmost importance.
Yeah, I mean, I think we are sharing a lot of things that's going to be actually very, very helpful for people who are tuning in tonight. And again, we're just pressed by time, so I'm just going to round up this very quickly right now. Okay. Okay. So to sum up, what you have is discuss regularly with the team to anticipate customers' needs.
Yes.
Decrafting the message, which is very important because it's about addressing the needs of the client as the so-called the market changes. And then you're also liaising with the marketing team so that they are able to get the insight that you get from the customers, so that they are able to make the necessary, or they can actually benefit from your insights, and then jointly come up with what we call a appropriate value proposition for the customers in the market. And then the process would actually repeat itself or reiterate, right? We fine-tune itself to from the marketing front and the sales front, right? The response that you get from customer, and you fine-tune the message as you go. Essentially, that's what they're saying. Okay.
And I also realized that in terms of part of my strategy is in terms of changing my expectation about how the prospect responds, and having remap my expectation in terms of hey, there are going to be changes, and expect that there are going to be changes, and inform the marketing team as well.
I think that's actually a very good point. Yeah. To in somewhat be ready that the client's expectation may change because of not because they are trying to be making your life difficult per se, but what you're saying is that the situation demands it, and so they have to adapt essentially.
Yes, because the expectation management will affect the state as well.
Right. There you go. Right. So let me see if this is covering the screen correctly. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so even this alone is going to be very, very helpful for people right now who is going through sales right now. I think the part is like what you said just now, to be able to expect that customers will have different circumstances, and to be able to rally, to be able to help them as much as you can. Yeah? And then this process about constantly being able to stay vigilant and alert on all communication channels, the way they respond, we're able to infer on what's actually happening with them, and then make the right presentation, or make the right proposition for the client. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Okay. So I think we ran out of time, so I'm just going to get you to talk briefly, right, across your 4 fundamental selling strategy. Yeah. And I'm not going to do a point-by-point breakdown, right? Because we have already gone past. We are approaching 1 hour right now. coming to 1 hour. How fast
Oh
time
my.
flies. Yeah, and we are thinking that we're supposed to keep it very short. In fact, we are doing our best not to give too many examples and too many details, right? Yeah, because all of them. So let's touch on this four fundamental selling strategy very quickly. So can you just walk us through what you mean by get ready?
Okay, getting ready would be in terms of when we wake up as salesperson, what are some of the organizer that we have in terms of sales and non-sales tasks that we want to accomplish? Because many times even for me in the past, I tend to get my time occupied by non-sales tasks rather than the sales tasks. So that is something in terms of priorities that needs to change in my online organizer. Then the other part is on having an online platform to plan which are the prospects that I want to prioritize upon on that day before I begin my sales call. Yeah, and then finally is in terms of before I make the phone call, I make sure that I manage my stage through my breathing, my physiology, and what are my thought patterns running. I manage them first before I make the first phone call.
Okay. Yeah. So I think it's actually quite common. It's actually quite common sense, right? Common sense. But even sometimes the common sense is no sense to some people because they just don't have a strategy. They don't actually have a strategy. So what you're saying is that you get your electronic management system, but there are so many systems out there. Use one that works for you, so that you are able to know what are your key high priority tasks for the day. Get that very clear out, written out, and then those things that are actually supporting this key task will take the second focus. And then you can do all the other things that you want to do, whatever that's non-essential to the work, right? But once you are clear that this is the thing inside there, then you know how much time you have to do all the other things. If you don't, right, then it gets all mixed up in a sense.
Yes.
It gives you a sense of clarity. Okay, this amount of things I can still do other stuff. I can do my shopping or whatever that is on how we are working from home. So, but these are my main tasks. I want to get this thing done by a certain time frame, and the time of the day to do it is optimal at this time, at this time, at this time. If you miss those time slots, then you're gone. So you make sure you're done. Everything else is free and easy around. But if you're not clear, then these things, this non-essential and essential becomes a blur.
Yes.
So that's part that has to be done. And then last but not least, but equally important is this notion about managing your own state and energy before you engage a client or go into your work, essentially. So let's go to in session. What do you mean by in session?
In session will be in terms of during the appointment. During the appointment, what is the kind of state that I want to hold on to, and what kind of mental structure that I hold at the back of my mind when I'm conversing with the prospects and all the customers as well. Because sometimes if I don't have the structure, I may end up going off point or irrelevant.
Okay, so in terms of your structure, what are some of the elements in your structure? Could you just give a couple of bullet points?
Sure. So one of them which very common that I like to use is to give, before they meet me, I give them a online fact finding sheet, or in terms of a certain like a survey in terms of what do they want. Whether they give a lot of information or little information doesn't matter, because what they give me, I will be able to expand upon that conversation from there. And most importantly is to tell them upfront what are the main points that I will cover with them during the conversation, and letting them know how much time I strive to be able to keep within the time, so that I can be relevant in the eyes of them.
Okay, all right. So essentially, it's essentially through several means of get information gathering, and then turn it as your mental frame of what you want to focus on and how to articulate those questions or statements that you're going to make, right, around those points that you are able to get from the client.
Yes.
And before that, you have already worked on your state, and you're continuing to manage your state as you go along.
Yes.
Okay. So,
and more importantly, is to observe the prospect state as well. Are they state aligned with my state as well?
oh, okay. So part of the structure is also to be able to, part of the structure is also to be mentally reminding yourself to observe the client so that you are able to calibrate the state that they're in and use that as another set of information on what you need to do more, do less as you go along.
Yes.
Right. And then the next part is about reassurance and confirmation. Could you just run through what is reassurance and confirmation in the first place?
Yes. I think for in sales terminology, we call it objection handling.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's very familiar to many salespeople and business. But I would like to put it in terms of the term as reassurance, because I find that a lot more humanized rather than a hammer and a nail kind of approach. You see. So in terms of that, when I'm in a reassurance frame, I will be able to regard the concerns and the prospects they are want, and I'm able to approach them in a more humanizing manner and in a more emotional manner as well. So that is something that that is when I'm in a reassurance frame, I'm able to regard the prospects as a human being rather than a problem to solve.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a good one. Yeah, that's a good. Yeah. That's a big difference. Seeing the client as a problem, or seeing the client as a form of assurance that you need to give, and more important, to see the person as a human being. That means they are going to be, they would have natural things like desires and wants, and needs, right? And then you just want to be part of that human experience. Treat them as another person, just like you. You have got your own reassurance and confirmation that you need, right? So reassurance is basically to address concern, and confirmation is basically to ensure that so confirmation to ensure that the client and you are on the same page, or confirmation is let them know that these are things that you want and these are things that we will be delivering, so that they can confirm this is what they want, essentially. Yeah. Okay. Okay. And what do you think is the value? What do you think is the value of phrasing it this way? And for a salesperson, instead of thinking of objection handling and thinking of reassurance and confirmation, what is the value? What is the benefit for them?
One is to, other than also gaining mutual trust, is that they see me as someone who care for them.
Okay.
Yeah, because that is where when people see me as someone who care for them, they are willing to be more empathetic towards me rather than also being nasty towards me as well.
Yes, there you go. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, I think what you're saying is very, very true, in the sense that objection handling. When you say objection handling, right, it puts you into what we call an adversarial position, me versus them. Objection handling. That means we are taking out our guns and you're taking down your shield, or you're taking up your gun and putting on my shield, because of the word objection handling. And that if reinforces in your mind, you're going to be punching your face or whatever that is, or they're going to bargain with you or whatever. But when you see it as a confirmation, or you see it in a vision, it comes across as being as a caring human being, in a sense.
Yeah. On top of that, is because we are in Singapore and Singaporeans tend to be skeptical. So whenever we come to a space where we handle the concerns already, on top of their mind, they are already thinking, oh, you're trying to sell me something already. So that is when we come from the space of care, that I am with you, that I want you to experience what I've experienced, and what I've experienced in terms of raising a quality of life based on the products or service. I want you to join me as well. So I come from that space that diffuse a lot of unnecessary psychological defenses.
Yeah, there you go. Okay. Yeah. That is one major takeaway, one big major takeaway for all the salespeople tonight. And I often tell people that I won't tell people that selling is like a metaphor for life. Metaphor for life, not just for a sales professional. Whether you're a parent talking to your child, or your spouse talking to you're talking to your spouse, you're talking to your girlfriend or whatever, you're trying to get an idea across in a way that will be accepted, or to be able to give a value to someone that they can see how it fits them, right? So that's part and parcel of what we call sales in a sense, you know. So that is a major takeaway. And then the last part, can you just walk us through in what you mean by enrollment?
Enrollment will be in terms of for in the past, I tend to think of enrollment as getting them to buy my product or getting them to buy my services. But now I start to realize that, especially when I handle concerns in a very humanizing manner, as what I mentioned earlier, I start to think enrollment as establishing a mutual agreement. A mutual agreement, because when we have a mutual agreement, whether the person buy or not, the chances of them buying another time will be a lot higher. And sometimes even the prospects may not buy, but they may refer the loved ones and friends to buy. For whatever reason, they don't buy, but they refer their friends and loved ones to buy. Yeah. So the mutual agreement sets upon a mutually win-win outcome, and it detached me from a space of a outcome dependent space where, if the person buy, then I'm successful. But I come from a space that whenever we have a mutual agreement on certain things, I get a more mini yeses from the other person. Then that's when I have more mutual agreement. I gain the trust. I gain the assurance that they know that I'm caring for them.
Okay.
So buying is just a matter of time.
Yeah. Okay. So it's not closing per se, but it's actually doing all the necessary steps. Whether the steps to follow up or whether the step is to come back and another time, or
yes,
to get them certain information that they need, or to be able to or it could be actually crafting a different solution, financial solution for them, or crafting a different and class attendance process with them, right? It's just part of the enrollment, because when you solve those things, then they are already enrolled in that in a sense, right? So it's a different way of looking at things, right? So maybe,
and the law.
Yeah. So the idea is about getting them to see that, if they have got schedules, let me work on the schedule, so that if I present the schedule, then if I address that, then it's already half of the yes already. Half of the yes is in. Then the other one is talking about the financial side of things. Side of things. Yeah. So I think that this whole idea about it, I think one of the important takeaway for me, and also for the people tonight, though I'm very familiar, but I think it's good to be able to make it clear, is that instead of seeing it as a closing, right, it's seeing more of enrolling the person. And the enrollment can take in terms of partial. How do you actually get a person a few more steps into what we are actually trying to propose for them? So the steps could be actually getting more information, how to adjust the payment structure, how to adjust the schedules, how to adjust their whatever concern that they have. So by when you adjust that, right, then they are actually already 1 or 2 or 3 steps into taking up the services that you offer, or that services that we offer. Okay, so let me backtrack. Getting ready is get your information and your state ready. In session, we mentioned in session just now, I talked about having a structure in your mind, being able to articulate that, and also making sure that you're tuning into what they are feeling.
Yes.
Next one is the reassurance and confirmation. Is about coming across as seeing them as a human being and caring for them and addressing some of their concerns. Enrollment is be able to turn what are things that is possibly a concern for them into a process, so that you are actually working on those processes. And when you work on those processes, that means 1 or 2 steps into the owning the product or service is already taken place. It's on the way there. You're actually taking the steps into the process. So okay, we're done for tonight. And I just have one last slide to go. And let me go through the last slide. Okay, the last slide here is essentially talking about the fact that for those of you who want to get more information about what we have shared tonight, or to have a conversation with Hans, literally you can have a conversation with Hans. Whip out your phone right now, scan the QR code, and it will actually go into what we call a very simple form that you can put forth your question so that Hans will get a chance to be able to answer you. As you can see right now, Hans is just caring about what you are thinking about, and he's constantly reading, making sure that he's coming across the best way, best to make you comfortable. And then or you can WhatsApp us tonight. And I like to, this is one of my favorite so-called phrases. You might just be one conversation away from getting the answers that you need. I think a lot of time people didn't realize that if you look back, right, many of the things that you're having trouble with or you're having challenge with, right, the first thing that you need to do is be able to have a conversation. Yes, maybe a conversation with yourself. If you can solve it at your own level, conversation, you say you solve it, then you're done. But sometimes we need to have a different perspective. We need to be able to see things outside of our own box. And that's when we talk, that's why we're offering ourselves as a way to be able to have that one conversation with you so that we can provide a different perspective. And sometimes all that you need is to have a different angle, a different vantage point, a different way to see the situation that you're in, or a different way to see that that's the solution is right in front of you and you see it. And that could be the first step for you to get into all the future that you want, the life that you want to lead, the relationship that you want, solving some of your long-standing problems in life. It starts with having a great conversation. So we look forward. To have that conversation with you. So Hans, before we end, do you have anything to say with regards to what we have talked about tonight?
Sales in the past, people tend to think in terms of getting the numbers, getting the how many products you can sell, and having a sense of achievement. But I think we need to evolve in terms of how we define sales, which is in terms of getting mutual agreement among each other. Because if we don't have a mutual agreement between the prospect and us, even if the prospect buy from you, the prospect will soon disappear from you too. So part of long-term business, having a long-term business, is that we have established a mutual agreement where there's a mutually win-win outcome among each other or between each other, so that there is a long-term relationship with them.
Okay, I got nothing to add. Awesome. So it has taken 1 hour, but I think that 1 hour is actually well spent. So for the rest of you tonight, you know what to do. You might just be one conversation away. Whip up your phone, connect with us, and we'll talk to you then. Okay, good. Good night.